So we go inside and Boomer does what Boomer does, and he sniffs out the whole perimeter, and he's sniffing everything that's going on, and I've got that little bit of anxiety because I'm a little worried because he's not walking as well, although he's doing pretty well. So we walk into the back room, and Boomer walks right in, and the first thing he does is he sits right down on my foot so that I can't move. He's 119 pounds, I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to stand here. And they come and they start checking him, and they ask if there's anything that's going on with him. And so I've shared with him that when he goes up steps, he struggles a little bit because his hips don't move as well. And dogs, especially bigger dogs, they get older, they get arthritis. So as he's walking, a lot of times he doesn't seem like he sees very well. And I thought maybe it was just me, and I'm like, he doesn't seem like he sees very well. So they did a test on him. And the test they do is a cataract test. So what they do is they turn the lights off, and they use this dark light, and then they flash it into their eyes, and then you can tell whether or not they have cataracts. And sure enough, if you look into his little pupils in the back, you start to see these clouds starting to form. And so for Boomer, he's lost 25% of his vision. And so when he's looking forward, these steps that we're wanting to go up, there's a wall on this side and a wall on this side, he can't see straight forward. So all he can see on both sides are two walls. So what's he think he's walking into? A wall. So what's he do? He just stands there because there's nowhere for him to walk. So I have to go and be with him, and I have to stand next to him, and I got to put my head down next to him and say, hey, it's okay, and I have to walk him up step by step by step until he can get outside. Now that may seem like, okay, it's kind of cumbersome, but it's your dog, and you do that. And hopefully for you young kids, if your mom or dad gets like that, you would do that. Some of you are not all, I'm not quite there, but if you're on the flip side of it, trust me, we may need you to help us with that. I know nobody wants to sign up. Right? Grandma and grandpa, whatever it may be, they need your help at some time. Now this reminded me, here's my dog who's lost 25%, and literally he gets to the point where he has to stop. And he can't move anymore. So for our house, they told us, you've got to leave it. It's almost like having a little kid where you baby-proof it. We have to dog-proof ours. All the paths that they walk, they have to be open for him. He's got to be used to going to that spot. If he can't, the dog will walk to the point and boom, he's going to stop. And you've got to move everything so they can go outside. It's a pain, right? But it's your dog and you love him, you do those things. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking back to this cat that we used to have named Emma. And Emma was one of those cats that, she was an indoor cat. We took her on as a stray when Deanna was pregnant with Chandler. And so the cat's like getting way up there in years. And as the cat would get older, at one point you could actually see the cataract forming in the cat's eyes. And it got to the point to where it was blocking so bad that she could only see out of one eye. But she didn't really know that. And so the cataract was it had closed like 75%. And so she thought that it was in front of her. So our cat would just sit there like this, and all of a sudden it would go. Come on, it was hilarious. Are you kidding me? So you go, oh, whatever. We didn't know what the cat was doing. I'm like, the cat is seeing ghosts, and it sees dead people or whatever it sees. But there was a cataract that was there that the cat was going for. The cat was going for it. So, needless to say, the cat had lost 50% of its sight, and the dog had lost 25% of its sight. But it wasn't something that just took place. It was something that had happened over time. And for our walk, it's much the same way. We want to focus on God. We want God to be first. We want to live spiritually. We want to go back to that time when we were completely on fire, when we were reaching out to people. We were loving people just to love them. We were doing it in the name of Jesus. We were doing it for the Holy Spirit. We were doing it because God said so. We were doing it because it felt unbelievable, and we loved people, and we served people, and we blessed people, and then all of a sudden we step back and go, wow, I want to do that, and instead I got blessed. Then all of a sudden something happened, and we hit a wall. On both sides, we see the walls on both sides, and we start to lose our focus, and lose our focus, and lose our focus, and the world set in. Classes got too difficult. Too much homework. The stress of having a test the next day, or too many hours spent writing a paper. And because of that, something had to give, so we gave up youth group. We gave up coming on Wednesday nights. Someone scheduled something on that Wednesday night. We could be with all of our friends and people that we wanted to grow with forward within the youth group, and we're like, oh, but that's scheduled for Wednesday. But we didn't go seek another day to find another day to do so. And it happens to adults as well. Hey, listen, you know what? I didn't get a chance to finish my Bible study, ladies or guys. I didn't get a chance to do that, and I was going to be 10 minutes late, and I didn't want to be rude. When no one in the place is rude, and no one is rude that's there, and they just want to see one another and to be with one another and to grow with one another. And yet whenever we are there, and we do go late, and whenever we do show up, we walk back and we're like, oh, I had such a good time, and I grew so much, and I learned about this today from God, and I learned about this from His Word. And it could be a club that we're a part of. It could be something where we're being uplifted. And yet, all of a sudden, we start to lose focus a little bit because it's the first thing that we give away in life. You need to understand something. This is something we learned a long time ago within the church. We can't compete with all that stuff. My kids play sports, can't compete with them. Your kid may be musical, you can't compete with it. Your kid may be an actor or an actress, you can't compete with it. You just can't compete. Our role in this life is to complete. We're to help to complete that time so that we can point back in this game of life to focus upon the things that truly matter. Because for each one of us, when we take that step back and look, we realize that those were the times that I could stay focused. And when I had that focus of God's focus, everything became clear. But somewhere along the way, things started to get a little bit hazy. And it got to the point where we started losing 5%, and then 10%, and then 20%, and then 25% of our vision. And we could only see side to side, and we got afraid, and so we literally stopped in our faith walk. And it wasn't God that moved. It wasn't God that lost focus. It was us. And here's the thing that you have to understand. It can happen to any one of us at any time. But do we allow it to get to the point of 25% and then 50% on our focus before we make a change? Before we decide that Sundays are too important to be here together, to grow together? To hug the one lady who's always there with a smile? To greet the one person that is always there to greet? To be with my spouse when, hey, this is our time together? To grow with other students? Do we take Wednesdays? Do we take Thursdays? Whatever night that we have a small group or we're a part of a group within a church or in some kind of activity where we can grow together? Do we say, that's what's really completing me? But listen, there's something else in competition. Over and over and over. And I want to stop because I want to be completed. But this keeps competing and competing and competing. And I get tired. And so I'd rather just rest. And I'd rather just chill out. And then 3 hours later, we feel the guilt from it going, oh, I wish I would have just gone, and I wish I would have spent that time, and I wish I would have been with those people. This is what happens to us in life. This is the game of life. Something is always competing for your time and my time. You and I both choose every time we spin the wheel where it is we're going to go. We have no idea what number we're going to get. We have no idea what the block's going to be, just like we found out in the game of life when we spun the wheel. But getting there, part of that journey, are we taking that journey with God? Are we focusing upon Him along the way? Because it's so easy for each one of us to get out of focus. 2 Samuel chapter 11. This is a man, David. And if you look at David and how he was described, let's give you a little bit of backstory. This is a guy who is after God's own heart. This is how he was described in the Bible. He wants to see as God sees. He wants the Spirit of the Lord to be upon him. He does everything that God wants him to do. At one point, one time, he is being chased by a maniac who is a king, who wants to kill him. All because people sang a song about him. All because he was the guy that stood up and said, that giant over there, yeah, he may be big and bad, but I've got God on my side. Let's bring it on. And it was time to fight. He didn't step back. He said, I'm bringing the fight to that giant. And he went and fought the giant. And he knocked him out cold with a stone. And then he picked up the very giant sword and then cut his head off and said, hey, look what I have. Is it because I'm strong? No, it's because I'm walking with God. So here is this young man who was ordained by God. And Samuel had said, this is the special one that is going to lead all the way down to who Jesus is. He's part of the lineage. And something all of a sudden competes for his time. And watch what happens in the story. David and Bathsheba is the title on the front part of this in chapter 11 of 2 Samuel. It says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. So the first thing that we find out is that David is the king. We knew that he was the king. And he is having this season of life. It's his season. So in the spring, it's baseball season. In the fall, it's football season. In the winter, it's basketball season or hockey season. And then when it comes back around, in the spring, we start back into baseball. And in the fall, we start into football. And in the winter, we go into hockey and basketball. So just like they had these things competing, at this time, this is when the kings sent their armies out. They didn't do this, it says in the spring. They didn't do this during the winter because in the winter in this area is when it was very rainy and when the crops were growing, and being ready to be prepared for those next 2 seasons. And so it would get very muddy. And if you're going to send your warriors out, if you're going to send your army out, you need to have your chariots. The ground was not dry. It was very wet and very muddy, so the chariots could not move during the winter time. So that was a time to prepare your army so that you could go out to do what it is that armies do. This was their season. And so here's this king, and he is chosen. David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. So if he sent all of them out, who didn't go along with them? The king didn't go out. So here's the king, and his job and his role, he is supposed to lead his armies. He's supposed to take them out and say, this is the areas that we are going to go and take over, because this is what's intended for us to do. And yet, for whatever reason, they think David was right around 50 years of age. He got tired. He decided, you know what, I've done my piece. I've done my time. I've handled things, and I'm just going to stay back this time, and I'm going to send everybody else out. But remember something. These are the people that he's closest to. These are his accountability partners. These are the guys that he cares about. These are the guys that he can turn to. And he is also that guy for them. They look to him for guidance. They look to him for direction. He does the same thing with them because they do this alongside of one another. And so now he has completely isolated himself and pulled himself away and said, you guys go do what it is that I should be doing. You go and handle the things that I should be handling. I'll just stand here and I'll do all the directions and I'll say all of those things and you guys go out and do it. And many times I've seen people do this to where they get in a position and the thing that they're the best at, they give to someone else and they allow someone else to do it and they forget that that's where God has blessed them. And so they stop doing that on their own. And when they stop doing that on their own, they start doing other things that they're really not that good at. And a part of them starts to die. And a part of them starts to give things away. And they get to the point where like, you know, I don't really need to be a part of this because someone else is doing it. Whenever we do that, we are robbing ourselves of God's blessing. If God has gifted you in an area, focus upon that area. It doesn't mean you can't bring people alongside of you. It doesn't mean that you can't bring people to help in those different areas. But if you take yourself out of that role, you're going to rob yourself of God's blessing. And when you do that, you're going to end up isolated. You're going to end up on an island. You're going to end up all alone. And you're going to be asking questions about what if and why and where did this and what happened. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, I lost focus. I lost my focus. David started right from the get-go and lost his focus because it was the king's role to lead his armies. And he instead decided to send and to delegate and to push that guy forward. It says they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, and David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. So what's he doing again? I'm going to send someone out. I'm going to send someone out. So here's David, and he's walking around the palace, and all of a sudden he sees someone bathing. That means that she had no clothes on. Does everyone get that? Does anyone here bathe with their clothes on? Yes, no, just be honest with me. I mean, we don't get in and go, oh, you know, I got a flannel shirt and jeans on. It's like a wash these while we're in there. We go through and then we dry. We don't do that, right? When we bathe without our clothes on. So some people want to blame Bathsheba because she's out there bathing on her rooftop, which the only place that anyone could look would be from the palace. And, you know, maybe she was like, oh, hey, look, but there's nowhere that says, hey, this was Bathsheba's doing. This is David's doing. Because even if that's her choice as to what she's wanting to do, David is making the choice to walk around the palace roof and to look and to continue to look and then to find someone to send to find out who she is. Sin is something that is going to cost you more than you ever intended to pay. Sin is something that is going to take you to an area that you never thought that you would go to. Every single time, those things will happen as we allow sin in more and more and more. So rather than flee, which is what God first tells us to do, we need to flee from that sin. We need to flee from the things that are causing us to lose focus. We need to flee from the things that we know that are not of God. We need to flee from those things that we aren't living intentionally for Him. We need to run and run and run and get away from it as fast as we can. Once he stopped and looked and kept looking and kept looking, he dove into his own temptation. Who knows you better than you? Who knows what your worst temptation is? Who knows when you were alone where, oh, I could go and I could watch this movie that I shouldn't be watching. I could go to this website that I shouldn't be a part of. I could put this bet down that I shouldn't be betting. I could choose this financial step that I shouldn't be choosing. I could decide not to go home when my wife and my kids need me, but instead to go to the bar. I could just have 1 drink or 2 drinks or 3 drinks and no one will really ever even notice. Who knows that better than you? Who knows that you struggle with anxiety? Who knows that you struggle with fear? Who knows that you struggle with doubt or worry, or that you are depressed, or that you are isolated, or that you are alone, or that you are discouraged? You know. You know who else knows? The one that steals, and the one that comes to kill, and the one that comes to destroy you from the inside out. Jesus came so that you and I might live intentionally and to live life abundantly. And it comes down to us choosing to focus upon Him and His words. David focused upon the wrong thing, and man, was he in trouble. But this isn't where it started. Because if you notice, he sent Joab out, and now all of a sudden he sends a messenger. Why is it just a messenger? Why isn't his name in there? He doesn't know who this guy is. Because everyone that he knows and everyone that he is close with, they're out doing what they should be doing within their role. And so he's just sending some unnamed messenger to go find out who that is. Because now, the people around him, he doesn't really know. And all those that need to be close to him, guess what? I can now get away with this, can't I? Because nobody's going to really know. He's going to know. God's going to know. And the devil's just going to laugh about it because the devil's going to know. The story continues and it says, the man said, isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then David, here we go again, sent messengers to get her. She came to him and he slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanness. And that's in parentheses. People are like, okay, what's that mean? What that means is that monthly there is a visitor that women have. And when that visitor comes, they can't help it, by the way, so you may have some, fluctuation of emotions or hormones. I don't know, that never happens to Deanna. This is on tape, that's why I said that. Good to go. Never happens to her, ever, not once, ever has that ever happened. But I grew up with 6 sisters, and that's why I know. This meant that there was no possible way that her husband Uriah could have been with her, because she had that cycle. So the only person this is now going to be pushed upon is David. Does everyone understand that? I don't need to go into this further. We've all been through life, health, 5th grade. Okay, good. All right, good. She had been purified herself for her uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David and said, I am pregnant. And guess what? This is yours, because I've just been purified from my uncleanness. And now what are you going to do? Well, David has lost focus so bad, it's gone from 25% to where the walls are here, to 50% to where David's now doing this. And we've all been there. This is like the coolest thing, right? I feel like I'm speaking in like space. Danger, danger, danger. We're working on this, just so you know. Should I move back or something? Speak on my head, it might just...
You might be losing battery. You might have to grab a handheld.
No. I'll grab a handle. That'll help. Oh, wait. It went away. Hold on. Let's grab my Bible. I'll come back here. Fair enough? All right. All right. So here we go. So, we're going to try it anyway. So here is Bathsheba. So now here's David. He says, the woman conceived, and she said, I am pregnant. So David, what does David do? David sent this word to Joab. Once again, he's sending. Send me Uriah the Hittite, and Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. So they're just having a talk. He comes back, hey, let's just talk, how are things going? How are things out on the war path, and how are things going? To which Uriah, at some point in time, has to be thinking, you know what? You should be out there with us. You're the guy that's supposed to be leading us. Joab can't be the next king because he's not part of your lineage. So why aren't you out there with us? But he doesn't do that because he understands what David's role is. He says, then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. Once again, David sent something to him. I'm going to make this look good. I'm going to make this appear good. But Uriah has to ask himself, why am I the one being brought back? Why am I the one given the special favor? I haven't really done anything special. David's not either. He's not seen the things that I'm doing. And now all of a sudden the gift shows up from the kingdom, from the king. And if I'm Uriah, I'm thinking something's not quite right here. And as a battler and as a warrior, I've got to be thinking I need to be on my guard. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. He made the decision that I am here to serve, and maybe the reason I'm coming back is because I need to protect the king. So I will stay here with the other servants, among the other people that nobody knows, among these people that no one's really sure of their names. But obviously I'm back here for a reason, so I must be here to protect my king. So when David was told Uriah did not go to his house, haven't you just come from a distance, he asked him, why didn't you go home? And listen to what Uriah says. Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open fields. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. In other words, David, I'm not going to lose focus. Why? Because my master, who is your master, my master, who looks at you as his master, my master would not want me to do so because I need to stay focused on the job at hand. I need to stay focused on the fact that my role is husband, and I need to love my wife. I need to love the Lord above all and then love my wife. I need to stay focused on the fact that I need to love my children. I need to focus on the fact that I need to love others as God loves me. I need to stay focused because if I don't, if I lose just a little bit of focus, just a little bit, just 25%, all of a sudden the blinders become on. If I lose just a little more than that, all of a sudden I'm grasping at the wind. And the more that I lose, the further I step away from God. And so Uriah is saying, I'm going to live intentionally with this focus because that is what God has called me to do. What is God calling you to do? What is God calling you to do that you are losing focus on every single day? Because it starts small, and the next thing you know, it's big. And we're reminded, man, the thief's got me, doesn't he? He's killing me. He's stolen everything that I had. And he's going to take that next step and do everything he can to destroy me. But what if I held on to the fact that Jesus came to give me life and to live it to the full? David's lost complete focus. And the example in front of him is this guy who has nothing but focus. And at any time, the king could have said, listen, I messed this up. Listen, I've screwed this up, and here's what happened. And you and I are going to head back out into the battlefield together, which is where I should have been from in the beginning. That doesn't happen. Verse 14, it says, in the morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is the fiercest, then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. He hands the letter to this man who just proved the integrity that he has, all integrity, all kind of character that you're looking for in a person. And Uriah takes this letter, which is his own letter of death, and he takes it back to his master without reading it and hands it to him. David, over and over, is continuing to cover this up. He is making this choice to keep sending people and sending people and send them away and send them away and send them away. The people that mean the most in his life, that are protecting him and are doing what he should be doing. Why? Because there was a temptation. And he dove into that temptation. And he allowed the devil to come in to steal. And it's starting to kill him. And it's going to take the place where it's going to destroy him. Uriah heads back. He gives this letter to Joab. Joab opens the letter and reads it. He follows what it is that his master had said because he believes his master took it to his master. And where the fighting is the fiercest, they're fighting in the middle part where all of the strongholds are. And the fighting is going on. And just at that moment, all of the men pull away and leave Uriah to himself to take everyone on. And he is killed. This man of great character. This man who was trustworthy. This man who stood for integrity, who stood on every principle that he had ever been taught about that God teaches lost his life because of somebody else. And he never knew it was coming. And he never saw it coming. And it happened to him doing what God had called him to do, what God had gifted him. And many times, that's why we lose focus. Hey man, ministry's tough. Hey man, being there every Thursday night's tough. Being there on time sometimes is really tough. Giving a cup of cold water in someone's name, that's tough. Offering a blanket, giving $1 to a homeless person, that's tough. Holding open a door, giving a smile, that's tough. Why is it so tough? Because we are so stuck in our own world. We're so blinded, and the cataracts are starting to kick in, and the focus is starting to be hazy. We get to the point where our tunnel vision is here, and we can see nothing else around us. And we're on that path to dying just a little more every single day to a loving God and a caring God who only wants us to live life to the fullest. Uriah is now dead. He's lost his life. In verse 25, it says, "Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead," is the last thing he gets from his letter. It says, "David told the messenger, say this to Joab. Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab." Hey, what I needed to have done was done. What I needed to cover it up is covered up. What I needed to make this to look good is looking good. And so now I can move on with my life as the king, back here in my palace, with my walls fortified, with all my strongholds, while you guys are out doing the things that I should do. And now he has to live with this every day of his life. And because of that, it's going to eat at him. And it's going to eat at him. And it's going to eat at him. And he's going to try and fix it. He's going to try and make it better. And there's going to be that one thing that he can't get past. And we all have it. I'm trying to make this relationship better, but I keep going back to the struggles I had. I'm trying to do this better, but there's this label I have. I'm a divorcee. I'm separated. I'm bankrupt. I'm an ex-con. I'm a felon. I'm a druggie. I'm a dealer. I'm a fill in the blank. You have it, I have it. It's something that we all carry with us. And yet God just wants us to give this to him. To flee whatever it is that's holding us back from him and turn to him. Because he's never moved. His word tells us when we draw close to him, he will draw close to us. Where do you need to draw close today? Where is it that you've lost that focus? Where is it that things are starting to get a little bit hazy? But God's right there, just waiting. Here's the final thing that takes place, and it says this. After the time of mourning, when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. He's going to make that mistake all right now. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. David's going to deal with these consequences. It's going to be really tough to the point where she bears this child and the baby dies. And he's got to make the decision as to what he is going to do. This is a man that was after God's heart. And yet he broke just about every commandment you could break in about one chapter. He coveted, he lied, he stole, he destroyed, he murdered. He did all the things. He put other gods before God. He put all these things ahead of him. So if it can happen to him, guess what else it can happen to? It can happen to you, and it can happen to me. When those temptations set in, and we choose to follow him, instead of following the one that loves us no matter what. So how in the world in this life, how in the world in this crazy thing that we're living, this crazy time that we have here, how do we take those steps? First thing is, we need to live life to the fullest. We need to live it intentionally. Last week we talked about there's things that we need to wash our hands of. But right now, there is an area that when we were talking, that you know that you've lost focus in. That focus may be Sunday mornings, where you know that you need to be here. There may be someone waiting here just to see you. There may be someone that you need to come in just to see. It may be Thursdays, it may be Wednesdays, it may be your ministry, it may be some kind of mission outside of here. It may be the widow across the road, it may be the little kid walking down the road whose parents pay no attention to him or her. But because we get so stuck in our everyday life, we are no longer living abundantly, we are living for ourselves. What we don't realize is when we do that, we dove into that temptation. And the one that's come to steal and to kill and destroy, that's who we're living for. We're selfish. We're arrogant. We're prideful. We're fearful. We're anxious. We're worrisome. We're doubtful. We're all those things that we don't want to be. And none of these are what God called us to be. When will we be of a sound mind? When will we live by His power? When will we choose to love? When will we be courageous in the battle? When will we follow the gifts that He has given us? When will we seek those people in our lives that need to be around us and that we need to be around? And be with them consistently. And to turn to them consistently. Because all of those things are what David chose not to do. And it started with one little choice. And it snowballed, and it snowballed, and it snowballed. Now his example is an extreme one. Sin is sin. When you miss the mark with God, and I miss the mark with God, we miss the mark. When that happens, we're not living God. When that happens, we're not living intentionally. When we allow that temptation in, we're not focused on the one that loves us just as we are. Challenge yourself this week. Where is it you've lost focus? A friend of mine just had cataract surgery. And he told me, I cannot believe the focus I now have. He's Scotty, when I see him in his office now, he wears these glasses. And I asked him, I'm like, dude, you look like Mrs. Beasley. What's up with those? And he's like, it's the only way that I can focus. But he does it. It's either that or Braille. I'm getting him a Bible, don't worry. We'll get him the Braille Bible. But it's so easy to lose focus, and sometimes we can't even control it. But it's amazing what happens when we take the steps to get back into focus. Because it's those moments when we live what Jesus has promised us to live life to the fullest. Next week is the final week in the game of life. But this week, in those areas that you've lost focus, would you give those to God so that He can complete that time with the people that He's brought into your lives that you love so much and that love you? Would you stand please with the close of the word?